I'm going to call to order the July 30th, 2020 special called meeting of the Carroll County Board of Commissioners to order. I'm asking County Clerk Susan Mabry to please call the roll.
Chairman Michelle Morgan.
Here.
Vice Chairman George Chambers. Commissioner Montrell McClendon.
Here.
Commissioner Clint Chance.
Here.
Commissioner Tommy Lee. Commissioner Steve Fuller.
Here.
Commissioner Ernie Reynolds.
Here.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner McClendon if he'd please lead us in invocation, and Commissioner Chance if you would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Let us pray. Father, we just thank you for this opportunity to gather together for the benefit of this community, to put our heads together to lead this community in the right direction. Thank you for the minds that are here tonight. We thank you for the brilliant minds that are in our community that help us each and every day and make decisions for this community. Father, we ask you to give us your wisdom and your knowledge and your understanding as we make decisions that impact our citizens. Father, we forever give you honor and praise, and we see it as a privilege to serve you in this capacity. And we know that you will give us strength, Lord, the strength that we need, especially in the time that we're living in right now. Father, we give you honor and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented for the special called meeting?
Motion made.
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll ask all those in favor to raise your hands. Any opposed? The only item for consideration is item 8.1. It's the consideration of the county's approval and backing of the insurance bonds for the Carroll City County Hospital Authority for the benefit of Tanner Medical Center, Inc. I'll call on the county attorney, Stacy Blackman, to give us information on the resolution and the intergovernmental agreement.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Back in February, the board approved entering into a resolution to authorize bonds up to $50 million with the hospital authority for the benefit of Tanner Medical Center, and also entering into an intergovernmental agreement to back the bonds to levy up to 7 mills in the event needed to pay the bonds. This is for about $14 million to refinance 2010 bonds and $33 million for new projects, including the Open Heart Surgery Center. And we had to wait a few months to price the bonds, but they hit record lows. I think Gabe Agan with Raymond James can tell us about the pricing, but the rate that was obtained was a record low, I think, since 1990. Is that right? That all-in cost of 2.75%. So this resolution would authorize the certificate purchase agreement. The bonds are called certificates, and the supplement to the intergovernmental agreement with the actual numbers that are lower than those which were authorized in February, the disclosure agreement, and any actions taken by the staff. And if you have any questions, I think Gabe might welcome the opportunity to explain briefly the pricing.
Well, thank you, Stacy, and thank you all, the Board of Commissioners. And it's a pleasure to be here. It's when I was here in February, it seems like it's about 4 years ago now. A lot has happened since then, to say the least. Not only with the crisis you as the county have had to deal with, what Tanner Medical Centers had to deal with, and really, come together as a community to get through this crisis. We too have had some pretty big challenges in the financial markets. In February, we approved parameters because we weren't ready to price yet. So as Stacy mentioned, I had to go back to my notes, but up to $50 million in par amount, up to $8.4 million per year maximum annual debt service, up to a 6% maximum interest rate, and up to a 40-year final maturity. So we're way below those terms. In fact, kind of the interesting thing is going back in my notes, at the time rates were very low, but the payback for this borrowing was about $75.6 million in the numbers that we provided at the last work session before, you voted to go forward with this. Right now the total debt service is $69.45 million, so, well over $5 million, even less than then at the low rate. So we have seen a remarkable turnaround. What we were kind of dealing with in March, when the pandemic first started hitting, a lot of investors were raising cash, and we saw record redemptions. Even though Treasury rates were coming down, municipal bond rates spiked pretty significantly. So we put this deal on hold for a few months, and it was a good decision to wait because we hit all-time lows. Like there's a chart. I'm not going to go through all those slides, but I know Susan was kind enough to hand them to you. We tracked this data, the 30-year revenue bond index back to 1990. And rates have been lower than this 0.0% of the time, so y'all did pretty good. Okay. But some of the specifics, it's a 30-year bond issue. It's callable in 10 years, so if rates are lower, if you want to pay them off, you can after 10 years. The bond yield for arbitrage purposes, bonds have to price to the lower of the yield to the call or to the maturity is 1.8%. But the to maturity yield, which is, since you got premium bonds, not to go into a whole lot of specifics, but investors, buy the right for a higher coupon rate than on here. It's pretty common in the bond world, but you're getting, about $47.5 million for $40,335,000 is the par amount. So if you pay them off earlier, that effective yield's lower. But the to maturity, which I think is the fairest, what you're truly paying if you keep them out, there's 2.75. So for 30-year fixed rate bonds, hospitals, generally have a little bit higher interest rate than the local government, but having your support behind them is really helping them, save. I think we estimated about $2 million and believe that's pretty consistent with how things actually priced out. We're working on another hospital that's pricing one today that did not have county support, and it's pretty similar to that spread difference. So it was just overall an amazing day to be in the market. We had some oversubscription. We had about $172 million of orders for the $40 million in bonds, so that allowed us to tighten those interest rates up a little bit, give you a little bit better deal on that, to reflect some of the, simple supply and demand. You have more folks that want your bonds than supply. We're going to make it not quite as appealing to those investors and more appealing to you. Well, I say you, but the hospital authority and, counties just only on the hook if Tanner is unable to pay, which they have had a solid history of making payments and never having to call upon the county. And, this last year, they like everybody, performance is down a little bit, but, well, considerable, but they're still doing really well, even considering things. So, just a couple other points I do want to make is, and I was careful to make that at the hospital authority meeting, but there was a lot of work that went into this bond issue. There's a lot of pages front and back here in this offering statement right here, and dealing with Moody's and S&P. I know Michelle and Stacy were there, but Alicia, took a huge, spent a lot of time, did a really good job of representing the county, both Moody's and S&P. We got the bond ratings affirmed at AA2, AA, which is an excellent bond rating. You've done a really good job of keeping solid fund balance over the last, 5 years and improved that, and just an excellent story overall. And I think it is the case where we have, a good, 2 credits. We have an excellent medical center with their revenue pledge, and then, county with strong finances there too. So Marketplace just love these bonds. Not going to go into too much detail on every page, but any questions? I know this is kind of, it seems like a long time ago, but I know something we already went over in a lot of detail back in February before y'all voted to approve the initial intergovernmental agreement, and this is just coming back with final interest rates. And if you agree to adopt this resolution, we'll also sign a purchase contract between my firm that'll give you the deal that we just talked about. So that's all I have.
Loy Howard is here also representing Tanner. Thank you for mentioning the work Alicia did. I sat in on a few of the phone calls. They were grueling. They were, I mean, one of them lasted well past 2 hours, and Alicia didn't bat an eye at the questions, and she had all the right answers. So it is a good partnership, but we have to give a lot of credit where credit is due, that she had the answer for everything they threw at her.
I guess my only additional comment, assure, and I've spoken with Ms. Cersei about this, obviously as we move forward, staff will, do their due diligence in making sure that we're reviewing any financial statements as far as the strong standing that Tanner has had and will certainly hope continue to have. We appreciate everything they're doing to build in the community, but I think would be remiss, everything that we have gone through, since this is a continuing process, if I didn't ask the question. So I just want to make sure that staff feels comfortable and that we're where we need to be, just making sure we're staying on top of the finances on behalf of the people, to make sure that we never have to become involved in these, right? And I know hopefully that will never happen. So thank you for everybody involved. But Ms. Cersei, we're where we need to be then, correct? Thank you.
And it is a condition that kind where well, there's two places where the county has to provide data, or I'm sorry, the county. The Tanner Medical Center does agree to provide an audit to the county each year, as well as there's a bond continuing disclosure requirement that it has to be filed, so it's a transparent, available process. Okay.
And just a couple points. So we're okay as far as that reporting and the interpretation of it as well. Is that correct to say, Alicia? If we get those reports, and then we can interpret them inside, so that we not only get the reports, but we know what the reports contain, and if they do have any looming financial.
Actually, their reports are part of our financial reports. So
Okay.
not only do I look at them, our auditors also review
Yeah.
them as part of the content of our financial statements.
Yeah.
So there's that review aspect, and we also have the option, if we would like, to hire an outside audit firm to review those. So, my eyes are on them, our audit firm's eyes are on them, and then if that's not felt to be enough review, then we do have the ability to hire an outside firm to review those statements also.
And I echo what Commissioner Chan said, that we feel like Tanner for a long time has been stable in the community and has a good financial footing. But I did want to ask one question about one of the things in the first supplement to the contract. I just didn't know if this was typical wording or not. It seemed to just stand out to me. In the number 4 under the first supplement, it basically says, as it goes on in the section 4 and 5, that basically the way I read it, if the authority fails to pay the interest penalty, the principal and interest, that the county will pay, and the county will levy any tax that it has to pay. And that just kind of struck me. I was expecting that if the authority fails to pay after liquidating all its assets and with no more than $2,000 cash on hand in the bank, or in some dire strait scenario, but it doesn't say that. It just says if we fail to pay on some whim, well, the county will pay. I mean, I know it doesn't mean that, but are there any conditions upon? Is that normal language?
It is very standard, and just there's a trust indenture that's inside of this, so not to get into too many specific, but a lot of these funds from the hospital fund go into like a gross revenue fund, and all that money gets paid first, and they have cash investments and reserves, so there's a lot of things that come first ahead of that. So it's not like they just don't pay one time or have, so there are some procedures where their money goes first before you would come and hit under that contract. And one thing that's always raised is, hey, how 10 days notice, it's pretty big on the budget. What if we're not in a strong financial position? But the practical matter is, it's a long way before things get. But if a part of your question, and making sure you have a good knowledge of how they're doing, that's part of your job, because if there's a long way to go down before it gets to that, but if it starts running a situation where they have year after year financial challenges, their investments are depleted, you know, you do need to be prepared, hey, because you are on the hook to pay those if they don't. That's one reason we got, you know, the upgraded rating with the county support here. So, does that clarify it some? But it is standard, you know.
Some,
very
I
standard
guess I
language,
just,
okay.
I mean, as an auditor, I'm looking for,
Absolutely. And there's
detail, and so I,
we could send you, there's a lot of document summaries here. So there's a master trust indenture that basically captures all the revenues from Tanner Medical Center. It goes to pay, you know, through that, and a lot of protections, covenants in place there. So that comes first, and it's fairly lengthy, but
I guess my bottom line question is just, what is the extent to which Tanner is obligated to pay before it calls upon the county to pay? I guess that would be a way to put it.
well, it's, you know, their full faith and credit pledge to use all their wherewithal to possibly pay these. So it's
And we then as a last resort, but that's not what
your
this
last
says.
resort. It's not like if they start having some, you know, it's a last resort.
I mean, I guess the only thing that makes me uncomfortable is it doesn't say that. I mean, we have some assumption here, I think, but I don't.
It probably doesn't say in black and white those words, you know, the county's the last resort, but the mechanism, they're direct agreements between the trustee of the bonds and Tanner. All the loan documents were with Tanner first. So this is saying if Tanner does not pay within that time, then they come to the county. So they're going to be knocking on Tanner's door before they come to the county.
Yeah.
So.
And there's some
Okay.
other procedures too about, like I know we talked about, you know, what but if they drop below a certain level, I think they're required to have like a consultant have to come in and look. I mean, there's a lot of protection, not only for you, but for bondholders.
Yeah.
You know, so if things start getting challenging, you know, there'll be some protections in place there.
Okay.
Any further questions for Stacy or Gabe or Alicia or Loy? Okay, hearing none and seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the resolution for the Hospital Authority bond financing and supplement to the intergovernmental agreement? And a second.
Motion made.
Second.
Okay, great. Is there any further discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none, all those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed?
Motion approved, 5-0.
Great. Thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn in a second this special called meeting?
Motion made to adjourn and move to the special.
This is the special called meeting. I want a motion to adjourn the special called meeting.
Oh, yeah. Motion to adjourn special call meeting.
Okay,
Second.
in a second. Great, thank you. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay. This meeting's adjourned. We will move into, at this
Thank you.
time, our work session. Bye, Gabe. Thank you, Loy. Okay, so I call the July 30th, 2020 Carroll County Board of Commissioners work session to order. I'm going to begin with calling on Juvenile Court CHINS Team Coordinator Linda Blanchard to review her grant application for the Edward Brin Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, which, congratulations, you continue to keep getting it.
Yes, I do. Every year I've been, knock on wood, right? My name is Linda Blanchard. I am the CHINS coordinator. It's the Children in Need of Service, which is the children who don't have delinquent charges. They have unrulies, truancies, that kind of thing, the low level, as we call them. Every year I have the honor to apply for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistant Grant. And they give me a figure. It's based on crime or something. I don't know. They actually give me a figure of what I can apply for. The amount this year is $13,226. And this year I am going to apply for some laptops. With everything that's going on in all our Zoom meetings, we don't have computers that have cameras on them. So there are 5 of us that are needing some laptops to actually conduct all these meetings that we're doing. So I'm going to spend roughly about $4,000 on those, a little less than that, but somewhere in that ballpark. The rest of it I'm going to use for counseling services, which is actually what I'm using it for this year. for the children and the families that come through juvenile court and that can't afford counseling, or if it's some kind of out-of-the-box counseling, like sometimes we'll do like some equine therapy or something like that. So whatever, something if their insurance won't pay for it, or if they're in between insurance and we're trying to work with the family to get in the insurance. So the rest of it will be towards that. So, okay. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have our county engineer, Brian Kent, has a presentation for us on MS4 awareness.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. I'm here to do, like I said, it's just an overall brief of MS4 awareness. There's 36 slides to this. If we don't get through that, I don't really want to go through all of it. This is just an awareness training on your part. We do this with county employees once a year as well. And one of our recommendations, one of our stormwater management plans, which I'll get into that later, is to present to government officials to raise awareness. But this is specifically District 2 and District 3, where our MS4 area is. You'll see a map up there, and we'll get into it. This is just our program. The permit was reissued in 2017, so Carroll County is now still reissued, signed the notice of intent to begin work on the next 5 years. These permits are good for 5 years. The map you see is the MS4 permitted area for the unincorporated Carroll County. Included in that is the city of Villa Rica and the city of Temple. What you see is the yellow is what Carroll County assumes responsibility for in the MS4 municipal separate storm sewer system. We have 22 outfalls. That's what the red delineates that we monitor. The purple line down the middle delineates the 2 watersheds. We have the Chattahoochee and Tallapoosa watershed. The blue areas that you're looking at delineates the groundwater recharge areas that are in the ordinance. That will be the second part of my discussion later on, will be the ordinance that we update, that we try to protect our groundwater recharge areas, and we do that specifically through the MS4 program. The signs you see, these are how we delineate our MS4 outfalls, that those signs are in the area that anywhere Carroll County right-of-way crosses a state water and there's any of the ditch areas that cross those state waters, those outfalls are important for us to delineate. What that is important for is the MS4 is nothing more than a maintenance program. We have to show that we're doing our job to maintain water quality in Carroll County in the MS4 permitted area, or excuse me, urbanized area. I need to say urbanized area. That's the signed notice of intent that we did in 2018. That's good for 5 years. This is just a breakdown of what you see when you see MS4. You see the sewer, this is the stormwater. So we're only dealing with the stormwater runoff that is in our Carroll County right-of-way. Why it's important to our community and what we're doing to manage our stormwater is all part of our program. Any conveyance system that conveys the stormwater, again, is what we're talking about. We don't have, in the MS4 area, we do not have any county maintained infrastructure. All of it is the right-of-way, the ditches. We do not have anything as far as detention ponds, sediment basins. We do not have any county facilities in the MS4 area that we have to really dig into and promote any further inspections on. So this is just mostly the county right-of-way maintenance. Rain events, snow melt, anything that causes stormwater. This is pretty much self-explanatory. I already said 22 outfalls that were inside the area. The headwaters of the Little Tallapoosa Rivers, important to note that on the 305B, 303D list of supporting and non-supporting streams, it is an impaired non-supporting stream, the headwaters to Sharp Creek. We have to report that is. Point source is easy to identify. If I can point to it, that's the point source. It's the non-point source that's not regulated. That's why I have those in there. Most of our point source is development runoff. Non-point source is agricultural community that flows into the streams. We've got anything that runs out anything that gets into the streams that is just a mass conglomeration of what's going on in the undeveloped area. What you see is why we have a problem. The more water, the more we pollute the water, ultimately those who make our water, the more expensive it is to make our water to drink. So anything we can do on the front end before we get debris into our water supply, we're actually doing a favor, trying to keep our costs down so we have drinkable water. Just showing some pictures of what we're doing, trying to keep those catch basins clean and trying to keep the runoff from parking lots from getting into our water supplies. Again, from development reasons, this is again what we're trying to stop is the added runoff from increased development in the area. We've got any number of rain events that cause problems going across and running into impacting the downstream effects of their development. We have problems with illicit discharges. What you're seeing in that picture is an illicit discharge. Illicit discharge could be as simple as washing your car in your driveway. We try to have some kind of, I think I brought that scenario up last time, but that is an illicit discharge. So the best thing to do is move your car to your grass and wash your car, or any of these impacts that allow the soapy water and the sediment to get into the catch basins and get into our streams. Pollutants that we deal with that are illicit discharges are pretty self-explanatory, but we are partnered with different groups. The Natural Resource Conservation Service we partner with, Carroll County Environmental Health we partner with, and Keep Carroll Beautiful we partner with in this program to help do that and maintain our illicit discharge ordinance and maintain that we have situational awareness so we can combat illicit discharges in Carroll County in the urbanized area. Some metrics for you in the urbanized area. We have 236 stream miles. We have 80 miles of designated streams. We have 154 miles of non-supporting streams. We have 6 miles of pending assessment for those. So pending assessment, the FC is fecal coliform. The NP is non-point discharge. Again, those are not regulated, and that can't be combated. But we have urban runoff as well. So again, we're talking about the 305B, 303D, 2014. That needs to be updated to at least 2018. They update it every so many years. They don't update it every year, but it was last updated 2018. We have not had any streams, nor have any streams come off the list or come on the list. All the information is the same. In our MS4 area, the 22 outfalls we identified was 118 miles of county right-of-way and 45 miles of streams. So what we're doing about it is we've developed a stormwater management plan in accordance with the permit that was reissued in 2017. As part of the stormwater management plan, there are 6 minimum control measures that we're asked to build on in that permit. Each minimum control measure has best management practices that allow us to better meet those minimum control measures. One of those best management practices is what we're doing right now, is educating the public, and what you can do after this is to go out and say we do have an MS4 program. We're actually going live with a Facebook page that has an MS4 program, and for people to get to that we can report complaints, or we can link to other departments that have volunteer opportunities, or you can stay aware of anything that we may choose to put out in the MS4 area. Part of what we do, again, is what I said, we're implementing our stormwater management plan. We have an annual report that has to go out to the state. It's set ahead right now. We've had the feedback from 2018 annual report, and we received that feedback in the 1st of July, and a week later we received the feedback for our 2019 annual report. I put that response in the mail yesterday, and we are constantly kind of tracking our progress and reporting on our tracking our progress toward our goals and reporting our progress. That's what that feedback is. So some of the feedback, for instance, is we pick up litter, we pick up trash, and working with Public Works, all that debris comes to a bin and we take it to the transfer station. Well, we don't exactly ticket ourselves. What the feedback is, EPD is wanting tickets to show that we've disposed of. We report 8,200 pounds of litter picked up in the MS4 area. They want tickets to show that we've disposed of it properly. So we're going to work on producing tickets to show that we're disposing of it properly. That's one of the feedbacks. I've already talked about this, 6 minimum control measures, and we have the BMPs. We have a specific number of BMPs that are required for each minimum control measure. That is spelled out in the permit that we have signed on to until 2022. So each of those BMPs has a measure that we do. Public education and outreach, we work with Keep Carroll Beautiful to go out and educate school children, middle-aged school children. They have volunteer opportunities for our public participation involvement, any recycling events where we're coming in and talking about what we're recycling. We report those metrics of, pounds of debris that didn't make it into the stormwater system. And then the illicit discharge, construction site, post-construction, which I have a model ordinance that we'll be updating at the BOC meeting, and the pollution prevention. All that is pretty much done through community development, public works, or environmental health to make sure that we're keeping our environment clean by going out and having legal authority to go out and police any illicit discharges such as failing septic systems or erosion control issues and other type of construction issues. I'll go through this. We've already kind of talked about it. We've got an illicit discharge ordinance that we have. All this just says we've got everything in place. Pictures, silt fence, we do construction, we do this. This does tie in with our land disturbance activity. That's kind of why I got the lucky draw to create this program. The way the program is written is try to incorporate what we're already doing. We're not trying to create anything new, reinvent the wheel. This program pulls together everybody who has already been doing their job and continues to do their job. Post-construction ordinance, you will be seeing that as an update for to remain in compliance for the MS4 program. And this just continues to talk about everything I've already kind of said, so I don't really want to get into round talk about how we continue to do what we do and why it's important for us to manage our stormwater. I will say, if you wonder why it's only that portion of Carroll County that is involved in the program, the urbanized area as it's called, it's all based on census data. 2010 census put an urbanized area is defined as 500 people per square mile. So the population centers like Villa Rica and Temple became an MS4 community, but unincorporated Carroll County, based on census data, created the urbanized area that you see. So I fully expect after 2020, the census, somewhere around by 2022, 2024, we'll probably hear that our urbanized area has expanded, and we will continue to expand our reach into Carroll County as far as MS4 opportunities for stormwater and managed stormwater quality. That, in my opinion, the next urbanized area will probably move more down the Highway 61 corridor and the 166 corridor going toward Douglasville. So Fairfield and all that area will probably be more of an MS4 area, and we will increase our reporting area. This is the state point of contact. We're dealing with our regulatory contact is Mildred Granderson. That's who that letter came from. That's who my response went to yesterday. So there's all sorts of comments to be made. There's also all sorts of talking to be done, but your time is important, and I'll stand by for any questions you have.
Question for you. So in my district, District 5, is there an MS4 program?
No, sir. The way the ordinance reads is we're only after the urbanized area. If complaints come in, we try to deal with if there is a stormwater discharge or anything like that. We do go out, and I try to use the language, illicit discharge, and all the language we use, and we try to work with folks on how we get around it. But a lot of it is case by case basis, because much of agriculture in your area and a lot of other areas, much of agricultural is not regulated per se. It gets into civil matters between property owners, but we have been able to effectively address complaints where we don't just go out there and do nothing. We're able to point people in the right direction and say, this is what you're doing, this is what you need to do a better job of. And in my time here, we've been able to address those concerns without having to, it's not like we don't have tools in our toolbox to use.
In my district, you are aware of the rock quarry being proposed and so on. I'm just wondering, would that at all fall under MS4 purview at all?
Not Carroll County. For any kind of quarry, there's 3 specific things that are exempt from county review: timber harvesting, agricultural activities, quarries, and anything. Another fourth one is anything overseen by Army Corps of Engineers or Natural Resource Conservation. So the quarry project is start to finish the state surface mining unit. They have an implemented plan that has to be developed all the way to how they close it out and secure the mine. Everything would be done from the state perspective. But we don't have anything we don't have any stormwater, land disturbance, anything in that regard per federal and state law.
So as far as monitoring this, like if we have a extended rain event or something, is it only complaint driven, or do you ride out and say, hey, it's been raining for a week and it's going to rain another week, so I'm going to ride around these areas and see if I can visually see where water is shedding? I mean, I saw a lot of that on the photos. I mean, how do you exactly arrive at how you keep up with this program? I mean, is it complaint, or do you proactively go out and try to find things?
Yes, both. That's part of the deal. We got to get out. You can't do it unless you got boots on ground looking at it. But while it's under construction, from an erosion standpoint, we inspect the inspectors. During the construction site, you are required to have monitoring your own site. You're required to do maintenance and monitor your own site. What we do is we ensure that those inspectors are maintenance, and that's being done on site. From a stormwater perspective, that is why the ordinance was updated. One of the updates to the ordinance is all stormwater, the first 1 inch of rainfall has to be retained on site. So anything in the MS4 area in your district, any new development, which we haven't had any new development in your area that since this has gone into place in 2014 or 2015, but any new development is required to retain the first 1 inch of rainfall on site. If that's not happening, then you're not meeting the Blue Book, the Georgia Stormwater Management Manual. And that's what the ordinance goes toward, and that's the tools we have you have a notice of inspection, notice of violation, stop work order, and possible citations after that.
So does this overlap in the municipalities, or do they handle totally separate and then you're out of it, or how does that?
Has to be handled totally separately. We don't have anything to do inside the municipalities. I do have good communication with Villarica. Jameson Green is the watershed director, or whatever his title is. We talk, I won't say regularly, but we talk, and anytime we get something on the fringe, we do work hand in hand and try to come to resolutions, or if I've got a point of contact he needs, or if he's got a point of contact I need, we do have good communication and try to resolve the issues as necessary.
Okay. Thank you.
So anything that's outside the MS4, like if a timber company comes in and clear cuts an area that's outside of your MS4 area,
Even if timber harvesting is state regulated, the only thing we're required, even if they're in the MS4 area, the only thing Carroll County is required to receive is timber harvest notification. There for tax purposes, or what we talked about was each timber harvester is required to put up a road damage bond. If they damage the road, we can pull it's a $5,000 bond that they're required to have. Should they damage the road, we can pull that bond, and it goes toward anything that Public Works has to do to fix the bond. But there is no timber harvesting permitting. That's by state law. That would be illegal. That just came out this past March. They redlined some of the counties that are not in compliance. We were not redlined, we're good. So, but you do not issue permits for timber harvesting. It is timber harvest notification.
So if they're silting up a stream, that comes under the Corps of Engineers or
Georgia
Department?
Forestry, Water Quality, has a water quality point of contact, Georgia Forestry, or can be Corps of Engineers. I've had to call them out on 2 separate occasions, and I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
It falls under their jurisdiction.
Any other questions for Brian? Thank you for the presentation. Okay, now we're going to move into the review and the discussions of the items for our August 4th, 2020 commission meeting. I'd like to remind everyone that during our budget work sessions, and I say sessions and hours, we let you know that beginning with this new fiscal year, the financial recaps will be done at the work sessions rather than at our regular meetings. But at this particular work session, there'll be no report. As with every year, the June financials go with the end of the year audit. So at our August work session, we will have the July financials. So we'll begin with 9.1, a budget amendment with Public Works. We have Charles Pope, Alicia Searcy, and Ann Lee with Human Resources to present this really wonderful opportunity for Carroll County.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, Board of Commissioners. What we're doing is this is the inmate that we want to hire when he was released and goes to a transition center. And when the budget was passed, the warden and I and all of us worked together on it. He was originally going to a state-run camp, which at that time it would have been a state contract, and his check would have went to the state, and they would have distributed out and paid his for his living quarters and everything. But now the warden, Mr. Richards, got him where he can go to Coweta County now, which is a county camp, and of course it's run by the county, the transition center is. So that's what we're asking, for y'all to transfer the $40,000 that we had in contractual services over into my personnel budget, the salary budget, so we can hopefully get him on payroll, which that would raise my budgeted head by 1 person, and so that's what we're asking.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what he has been doing for the county and what he would continue to do for the county?
I'm sorry?
Will you talk a little bit about what he has been doing in the county
Yeah,
and what he will continue to do for us?
This particular guy's been with us about 7 years. He is actually he can do about anything in the shop, as far as welding, TIG welding, aluminum. He's a good fabricator. He's a good gear and axle guy. He's just all around a good guy. And he mostly works now on the fire trucks, the heavy equipment side on the fire trucks. So he is an outstanding person and a good guy.
Mr. Pope, we had spoken about this briefly before, but just making sure going from contractual services obviously to an employee, he would have benefits and so forth that would be added to the salary in that conversion, so to speak. So we're confident that we've got, I mean, I don't think any of us are going to let a couple $1,000s get in the way, but I mean, I'm just saying that should balance itself out for whatever that additional might be.
We got it figured. Hopefully, if he gets moved to the transition center, we'll hire him around September the 1st. And Ms. Lee has got the figures there, what we've been working on. So if we hire him September the 1st, we'd need about $36,000 to carry us through June the 31st of next year.
Okay.
So
So
this is-
That includes the benefits?
Well, I'd like to piggyback off what Chairman Morgan was getting to there about, I guess, what all the gentleman does. And I'd spoke about this before, but went to Warden Richards, had a little graduation ceremony. I know maybe not involving this particular inmate, but some others that had gone through a welding program and stuff. And we talk about having a state prison here in the county and providing labor and so forth, and a lot of constituents see that as a good utilization of taxpayer dollars, that what it's costing us to room and board, they're getting out and working. But I see the greater value is we want them to get out altogether. And in a medium security prison, I guess most of those individuals at some point will get out, and so we don't want them coming back So I'm echoing the sentiment that I'm very pleased that we're stepping forward and, you know, taking the initiative to hire someone that has proven themselves, and I hope that'll be a successful opportunity for the county, and I hope it'll continue to be a model that people can come out and, you know, return to society and be good tax-paying citizens and contribute. So thank you for the partnership between Public Works and the prison and so forth. I hope we'll continue that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Charles or Alicia or Ann at this moment?
Just a technical one, just so I understand. This money's already in the budget. So Charles, are you going above and beyond to come to us for this request, or can you move the funds, I mean, without our involvement? It seems like a real simple thing if it's already in your budget.
I think the reason we have to come before y'all, because we'll be adding a budget head to our salary line item.
Before it was a contractual service, so they're not technically employed, just like Ms. Blackman and Mr. Jackson are working for the county and our attorneys, but they're technically not on our payroll from an employee standpoint. So it's kind of the same synopsis here.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Good.
No further questions? We'll move over to 10.1, the financial audit for Rushton and Company, LLC, which is a review of the engagement letter and with our annual audit, and I'll have Alicia Searcy present this.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring a copy of the
Okay.
letter with me. As we have done ever since I've been with the county, we've engaged Rushton and Company to do our annual audit, and that process actually started this week. But in summary, about halfway down the page, you see 4 items, which is where they focus their efforts. But they'll provide the management discussion and analysis, the schedule changes in net pension liability and ratio studies, schedule of contributions, and all the notes that are required to the financial statements, in addition to all of the other items that they do under generally accepted auditing standards. And as we talked about just a few minutes ago, there's a little bit more that goes into our audit because we do have some component units in the water authority and the hospital authority. So they do take those audits that are performed by other auditors and review them as part of our financial audit. They test samples of the work to make sure that we're properly recording things. They look at our internal control procedures. They look at compliance to make sure that we're, like we have the bond compliance reporting that we have to do at the end of the year. We have to provide information to the Department of Community Affairs. And they look at all of that information to make sure that we're properly reporting that and in compliance with those agencies, in addition to just auditing the actual numbers and looking at those items. And I thought your fees were listed.
It is. That's what's the reason. This is in our budget, but because it's a contract for more than 12.5, it's actually a contract for $97,800. That is why you have to approve it. Even though you approved it in the budget, we have to approve the contract to it.
That's on the very last page, or not on the very last page, but the next to the last page. In the next to the last paragraph is where their fees are listed. And then if we got into a situation where we needed a single audit, and that has to do with federal funding. If you receive federal funding in excess of $750,000, then we'd be subject to that single audit. For FY 2020, I don't believe that we are going to be subject to that, but FY 21, we probably will. The CARES Act funding will probably fall within that, and then we're looking at that firefighter grant, the SAFER grant, and then we've got the SAMHSA money. So I feel like next year we will fall under.
So a question I have that will piggyback off of Commissioner Reynolds, I guess, and as far as us doing, requests for proposals or trying to bid out things over time, I think this is a unique situation in that, I don't think auditors are going to cut us any slack just because we're doing business with them. But in the same note, when you're talking about spending this kind of money, it's very substantial. I know you have to look at situations. Not every audit firm is going to have experience with government and so forth, so that narrows down the pool anyways. But just trying to have a healthy conversation or dialogue amongst ourselves, is there a separate rule of thumb? And I don't know if this is an attorney question for our attorneys or if this is for you, Ms. Cersei, or Ms. Morgan, but is there a point in time where we should try to consider making sure that we send this out? Maybe we certainly wouldn't want to do it every year. And I like the idea that, auditors, you do want them, here again, not to get warm and cozy, but they understand it's a very complex, when you have all the institutions and all the moving parts, it certainly makes things go a lot smoother. But just looking at that hard number, if you're a constituent of mine and you're just saying, hey, you're spending this kind of money, I guess where is the accountability for us? And I don't know what the answer is.
Susan and I just had this discussion yesterday as we're preparing for our work retreat in September, and that was one of the things. Some things are professional services, some things are different contracts, so we are preparing that for you so you can, because there's a lot of contracts the county has, and we're preparing that for you to decide which ones do we want to put on a rotating basis, which ones do we want to look at this year. So that is being addressed in September.
Madam Chairman, can
Thank
I
you.
put a little
Yes,
institutional knowledge to work here? I'm not even sure Commissioner Chambers has been on the board long enough. We did this once. We typically went with Garrett, Stevens, Thomas, back to when it was Threadgill and Garrett. The counties always used them. About 2010 or a little before that, we decided to bid it out. We went with a huge firm, I won't say what the name is, but a big accounting firm that you all know that's all over the Southeast. It was an absolute nightmare. Not only did we wind up paying more money, we got 3 years audit at the end of 3 years instead of annual. It was a nightmare, so you might want to think about that. Sometimes the known is better than the unknown, so.
And I appreciate that. And like I said, I'm not insinuating that I'm unhappy for myself or whatever. I just think it's a difficult conversation. When you're spending that kind of money, it needs to be had. And we may be fine with them for the next 20 years, but I just think it bids having the conversation. So.
I don't think anyone was unhappy with it at the time. It was just a matter of they felt like it needed to be good. And it turned out to be horrible.
So we will be discussing all that in September.
Okay.
Any other questions for Alicia? Okay, we're going to bring County Engineer Brian Kent back up to review 10.2, which is proposed changes to the County Code of Ordinance relating to the stormwater management in MS4.
Hey, Madam Chair again. Yes, I don't really have a lot more to add. You have the resolution before you to strike entirety and replace the post-construction for new development ordinance. I believe that's Appendix B. Appendix A is the maintenance agreement that it calls for in the ordinance, and the ordinance references Appendix A, and so that's why Appendix B is the ordinance. But it was pretty broad. I've got the red lines in front of me if you want to see the red lines, or I can send it to you if you want to see it. But it was a pretty broad rewrite. The information relatively stayed the same, but it had not been changed since 2002, so it was deemed that I guess they needed to do something. But again, what it goes toward is really trying to draw up information and really change the stormwater management so they're retaining that first 1 inch of rainfall on site, but that's part of us. When you come in for a development application, that's what we require. When you over 1 acre or more, essentially we would call it a land disturbance permit. That's where stormwater ties into. Sometimes you will hear people talk about SWIP, a stormwater pollution prevention plan. That just means they're talking about it nationally. The national term is SWIP. The state of Georgia is ES&PC, Erosion, Sedimentation, Pollution Control Plan. So you can always tell who they're talking about and how they've done their homework if they're talking about SWIP or ES&PC. So yes, we do require ES&PC plans for anything over that, and this kind of ties in, and we're just going to continue. There's nothing new that's really going to come out of this.
Mr. Kent, on the stormwater facility maintenance agreement, I'd spoken with you briefly about this before. I guess on number 8, when it talks about in the event the county pursuant to this agreement performs work of any nature, expends any funds in performance of said work for labor, use of equipment, supplies, materials, on and on and on, shall reimburse the county upon demand. And I had brought up the question, if we had a scenario that seemed to have an absorbent amount of staff review time or preparation time or something that involved the attorneys that was above and beyond, it seems like that language is very specific on tangible or physical things, and we all know we may have a department head one day that says, my goodness, I've been spending 3 days on this, and you have to deal with it. So if we're already talking about where there's a scenario where there may be negligence or we're trying to put costs back on someone that we've had to do something physically, should we maybe consider language that would include, staff review above and beyond or attorney review above and beyond on a scenario that we felt like was costing the county a good bit of money? And I don't know if those scenarios exist or not. I'm just asking.
The language comes from the model ordinance. We can change it. My opinion is those issues have been addressed in the past, but as far as review, we get application fees. There are development fees. We do have a fee process. We do get part of the state fees because we're a local issuing authority. So we do get fees on top of that for the cost of doing business. Anything that comes above and beyond that, I believe that there's means to recoup those through reimbursements. But as far as the administrative part, I don't foresee any added legal fees other than if we ever issued citations and we're going before magistrate court and everything is laid out pretty much, but that's almost the cost of doing business. I may not be phrasing that right, but I don't see that we need to add language to it based on prior activities.
Okay.
But I'm willing to take a suggestion. I'll look at it, and if you want me to, I'm willing to look at it more, and I can probably give you a little bit more idea. But the fees that we've done in the past, I think they meet what we do. We're pretty much in line with state requirements. We get notice of intent fees, $40 per disturbed acre when we do it. The one thing we aren't doing is since we don't have a stormwater department, most stormwater departments charge based on impervious surfaces on site. So that would be something we could move toward. I would probably recommend against that a little bit at this point, but that is.
I guess my concern, such costs shall constitute a lien upon the landowner's property. I mean, a lien is when you don't pay something. So I'm not looking for the everyday scenario. I'm talking about a scenario where something has happened and you've got all this expenditure in here that's above and beyond the physical nature. And I'm not saying that, your advice is well taken, but I'm just saying the whole point of number 8 is that you're going to put a lien upon it if they're not willing to pay it. And so all I'm saying is what would be included.
You want to have a more umbrella to capture, make it more of a broader
I guess
term.
my point is, what would it hurt to have it in there, even if you didn't charge it?
I'm all about being ambiguous. I think I think if you give yourself wiggle room to have a discussion on it, I think that's what you're being more specific usually gets us in trouble. Being more ambiguous usually.
Brian and I can get together on some language and bring it back for Tuesday. Do you want to and see if that's needed?
Okay, thank you.
What was the article you were specifically referencing there? I got the red lines in front of me, so
it's number 8.
if you'd help me understand something, Brian. So I'm for, of course, protecting our natural resources, streams and so on. I'm also for not over-regulating homeowners and farm owners in the county. How does this, you said an acre is when the regulation kicks in, is that right? Disturbance of an acre or more?
For development, again, we're going to get back into, there are certain practices that are exempt. Agricultural activities are exempt. This doesn't change, this doesn't impact anything that hasn't already been impacted. This is usually development. There are 3 general permits. There's standalone permits, infrastructure permits, and common development permits. Standalone permit is for your one box store development. There's a Dollar General going on north of here, and it's impacting over an acre. It's a standalone project. Infrastructure projects would be something along the lines of the Carroll County Water Authority putting in a water line. That would be an infrastructure project. Common development is what we know is most subdivisions where you're building a subdivision, whether it's residential subdivision or a commercial subdivision. Those are regulated through other permits that tie into the stormwater permit that this is trying to put the umbrella on. So anything, like I said, agricultural activities, timber harvesting activities, they're all still exempt. It's not going to, we're going to go out and plow up our garden. You're not going to have to get a land disturbance permit to plow up the garden or anything along those lines.
What about a homeowner that wants to, Ben's big on putting chickens in the county now, so, but we're, if you wanted to build a chicken coop, and, a 20 by 20 chicken coop, are we into proper grading?
I think you're getting into a little bit of a zoning issue. If I interpret what you're saying, I don't have any concern over that. But we do have, the one thing I will hit, you're hitting chickens, and we deal with them multiple times. Poultry houses are an agricultural activity that is exempt. However, I'm advised to give you information that they are required to have an erosion control plan because of the footprint that poultry houses do, and those plans are reviewed by the state, specifically Cartersville. So you do have to have a notice of intent and erosion control plan if you're doing a poultry house.
Okay, but I'm just talking about, I'm not talking about commercial, I'm talking about somebody that wants to have 20 chickens in their yard or something. So that's not, we're not going there, right?
Not for this. It could be
Yeah.
Where I think you're going with it is one of the tools we use is, you're creating the runoff and you're creating a nuisance to somebody else's property. That would be the thing that you would probably have to be, just because you're exempt from having an erosion control plan and maintaining best management practices, perimeter controls, and trying to contain your site, just because you're exempt from that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be a good steward of the land and be responsible for your own property. There are methods to combat that as far as if you're allowing yourself to encroach on what you're negligent about and it encroaches on other people's property. There are tools to go about it, but this is not it.
Right. Yeah, and of course, the other extreme of that is if you want to put in a, 6-foot concrete step on your back door, I don't want to have to get $600 erosion control plan in place to, do that. We can get kind
swimming
of absurd.
pools, we are required to require erosion control plans for homes and subdivisions that do not have a notice of intent. That's probably the most thing that I kind of have a little pushback on, but we do it. We are required to get a tertiary plan, erosion control plan for each individual house, but only for the primary dwelling. We don't do it on accessories, so if you want to build, if you're in a subdivision and you want to put in a pool or you want to put in a shed or something like that, we don't require it for that. It's only on the primary dwelling.
Okay. Or a sidewalk or something like that.
Sidewalk is usually part of the NOI. That's part of, if you're putting in a sidewalk, you have the erosion control plan. We have 2 instances of that where the developer is the notice of intent and he's putting it in, he's already filed, he covers the entire site, or we have the tertiary, that the tertiary plan calls for it. So it's addressed either on a site-by-site basis or it's addressed as the primary permittee notice of intent.
Right. I guess maybe there's a more blanket response. So if I'm a homeowner and I've already constructed my home, I've been living there 10 years, and I want to put in a 10-foot by 15-foot carport, or I want to put a concrete sidewalk because I just have grass now to my back door, I don't have to come and get permits for that, erosion control permits for that, right?
No, sir. If, my question would be, to provide a little bit more amplification, are you in a subdivision or are you not in a subdivision?
Not.
Anybody who, if you're out on your own, there's no erosion control plan required of you.
Okay.
It's not going to impact the individual homeowner that's not part of a common development, that doesn't fall under general permit of common developments.
Okay. Overall, are there changes to that type of homeowner in these new regulations compared to the prior ones?
No, sir. There is
Okay.
nothing that impacts the individual homeowner. It's all development for common developments or standalone. If you're gonna fall under the state permits or those 3 permits I just issued,
Yeah.
you're going to fall under the stormwater MS4 permit. If someone, what would probably impact the individual homeowner in the District 2 area would be, I don't want to say it this way, but if sometimes people pull up on the ditch and they use that low spot to change the oil in their car. That's an illicit discharge. That would impact somebody that's not part of a common development but a homeowner. The one thing that actually falls into this is we've probably seen people have been doing it for years, rake their leaves into the ditch line come fall and light them on fire and burn the leaves. That's an illicit discharge. How do we deal with that? That's one of those polite walk up and go, you shouldn't be, we shouldn't do that because that's going to wash down, clog up the driveway culverts, and then Public Works has got to come out and replace driveway culverts and stuff like that. But that's the only time it would really impact a homeowner is those one-off instances.
Mm-hmm.
But you doing what you want to do on your property, this is not going to impact what you want to do on your property.
Okay.
I don't intend for it to. I get complaints where people want it to, but is from a standpoint of what are we going to enforce, there's nothing for us to enforce on that regard.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions for Brian? Okay, so now we'd be moving into the zoning session, which we don't do during a work session. And 11.1 at Highway 27 and Hubbard Springs Road has been withdrawn. So the only thing for Tuesday night is our public hearing on a consideration of a resolution ordinance of the Board of Commissioners of Carroll County regarding amendments to the Carroll County zoning regulations. What I would like to ask is to facilitate Tuesday being a little shorter for the public that is coming, to go ahead and put 9.1, the consideration of a budget amendment for Public Works to transfer funds from the contracted line to the salaries on a consent. I'd like to put 10.1, the financial audit with Rushton and Company's contract on a consent agenda. 10.2, I won't put on there because you want Stacy and Brian to go back and add some more things to number 8 or look at it. But it'd be, if we could move those 2 things to a consent agenda, it would shorten the meeting for the public to hear what they want to hear and not hear all this stuff again. Do I have any one that's not okay with 9.1 or 10.1 going on a consent agenda?
I'm fine with that. Mr. Pope and the ward may want us to brag on them again on Tuesday. We can't do that if it's on the consent, but.
Okay, good. So if I'm looking at the agenda correctly for Tuesday night, we'll have our special presentation. The only item under the finance will be nothing. And then the business session will have 10.2, and then we'll go straight into zoning. Is that correct, Susan? Okay, great. So at this point, I will entertain a motion to adjourn and a second, please.
Motion.
Oh, I don't? Oh.
No.